Late autumn at Hogwarts. The Great Hall was warm, loud, and safe for just a moment. Candles floated in neat lines above 4 long tables. The enchanted ceiling showed a calm night sky. Students laughed with mouths full and sleeves rolled up. Forks clinked. Owls watched from high beams like they owned the place. Hermione Granger was halfway through correcting Ron's homework again when the air near the staff table made a sharp, wrong sound. It was not a bang. It was not a crack like apparition. It was more like the world itself got scraped. A thin green line opened in midair. It stretched like a tear in cloth, then widened fast. The closest candles sputtered and swung as if pulled by a sudden wind. A few plates slid across the table on their own. Harry felt his stomach drop. The scar on his forehead did not burn yet, but everything in his body still screamed, "Danger." The tears snapped wider. A man stumbled out and fell onto the stone floor with a heavy thud. He rolled once, cursed loudly, and sat up like the floor had offended him. He was older than most teachers. His hair was pale and spiky, like he had forgotten to brush it for years. He wore a rumpled lab coat that looked burned at the edges. A metal flask bounced out of his pocket and clattered on the floor. He blinked at the Great Hall. Then he looked up at the floating candles and the ceiling that showed the night sky. "Okay," he said, voice rough. "So this is medieval Disney with mood lighting." All around him, the hall went silent. A few first years squeaked. Someone dropped a spoon. Professor McGonagall stood so fast her chair scraped. Her wand was out before Hermione even breathed. "Sir," McGonagall said, sharp as a snapped twig, "you are in Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Explain yourself." The stranger stared at the wand like it was a weird pencil. Then he glanced at the ceiling again, eyes narrowing. "Projected illusion ceiling," he muttered. "Cute. Low res, but cute." He reached into his coat. Several teachers moved at once. "Don't," said Professor Snape, silky and cold. The man pulled out a strange, squat device with a trigger and a glowing green center. It looked like a tool, but it also looked like trouble. Hermione's brain fired off a dozen thoughts at once. It was not a wand. It was not a magical object she recognized, but it felt important. The air around it tingled. Harry saw Dumbledore still seated at the center of the staff table. The headmaster's face was calm, but his eyes were very awake. The stranger pushed himself up, unsteady. He took one step, then paused as if listening to something only he could hear. "Yep," he said. "This place is crawling with weird energy, like a bad field test." McGonagall's wand stayed aimed at his chest. Ron leaned close to Harry, whispering, "Who is that?" Harry whispered back, "I don't know, but he looks like he's going to explode something." The stranger took another step. As he did, his boot nudged the flask. It rolled. He bent down, picked it up, and took a quick sip. McGonagall's face tightened like she might actually hex the flask. Hermione waited for Dumbledore to speak. He always did. But before Dumbledore could, a brave Hufflepuff near the front table blurted, "Are you a Muggle?" The stranger laughed once. It was not a friendly laugh. "I'm a lot of things," he said, "but I'm not." A loud pop sounded near the Slytherin table. A group of students flinched. A candle burst into green sparks and went out. The stranger looked down at his device, annoyed. "Oh, come on," he grumbled. "Don't do that. Don't die on me now." He shook it. The green center flashed. The enchanted ceiling flickered. The calm night sky stuttered like a broken film, then came back. A wave of gasps rippled through the hall. McGonagall's wand hand tightened. Several other teachers raised their wands too. The stranger lifted his free hand, palm out, as if asking them to stop. "Relax," he said. "If I wanted to kill you all, you'd already be dead." That did not help. A spell flew. Hermione did not even see who cast it first. A jet of light snapped toward the stranger's head. The stranger's wrist beeped. A clear, shimmering wall snapped into place in front of him. The spell hit it and splashed like water against glass, sliding off into nothing. The whole hall froze again. The stranger stared at the shield, then at the teachers, then at the students. "Okay," he said, voice quieter now, but still full of insult. So you are all carrying little murder sticks. That's fun. Dumbledore finally stood. He did not rush. He did not shout. He simply stepped down from the staff table and walked toward the stranger like he was approaching a nervous animal. Welcome, Dumbledore said, gentle. You seem far from home. The stranger looked Dumbledore up and down. Old man in charge, he said. Beard, twinkle eyes. Either you're the boss or you're the mascot. Dumbledore smiled a little, like that was almost fair. I am Albus Dumbledore, he said. May I ask your name? The stranger paused. For a heartbeat, Hermione thought he would lie. His eyes flicked to the side, fast, like he was deciding which answer was safest. Then Dumbledore's gaze dipped to the stranger's torn lab coat. On the chest, half burned but still readable, were stitched letters, Sanchez. Dumbledore's eyebrows lifted. Mr. Sanchez, Dumbledore said, calm and polite, I would like to speak with you somewhere quieter. The stranger's eyes narrowed. Yeah, he said slowly. Sure, that's not creepy at all. He glanced around the great hall again. Hundreds of children stared at him. Teachers held wands like they were holding their breath. For the first time, Hermione saw something behind the stranger's rude face. Not fear. More like boredom that had turned into sharp interest. Like he was looking at a puzzle that might actually fight back. Fine, he said. But if you try mind control, I'm turning your castle into a parking lot. McGonagall bristled. Dumbledore only nodded, as if that was a normal thing to say at dinner. Above them, far beyond the sky that Hogwarts showed its students, something invisible shifted. Deep in the dark places of the world, a cold mind tasted the air and whispered a name it did not know. And Hogwarts, ancient and proud, tightened its wards like a living thing preparing for a storm. The headmaster's office was quieter than the great hall, but it was not calm. Portraits stared. A silver instrument ticked softly on a table. Fawkes, the phoenix, watched from his perch, head tilted as if judging the stranger. Mr. Sanchez Rick, Hermione thought, because the way he moved felt like a man named Rick stood in the center of the office with his hands half raised, like he might fight the room itself. McGonagall stayed near the door, wand ready. Snape stood like a shadow near the wall, eyes cold and sharp. Mad Eye Moody, brought in through the flu in a rush, was already scanning Rick like he wanted to memorize the shape of every pocket. Dumbledore stood behind his desk, not trapped behind it, but placed in a way that said, "This is still my home." Hermione was there too, because Dumbledore had asked her to help translate, and because she had not let herself be told no. Harry and Ron waited outside the office door under a guard spell, angry and worried, and ready to rush in if they heard a scream. Dumbledore folded his hands. "Mr. Sanchez," he began, "I want you to know." "No," Rick cut in, pointing at the desk. "No speeches. I don't do speeches. You want to know what I am? I'm a guy who made a wrong turn. Your dinner party almost shot my head off, and this place is loud." He tapped the side of his head. "Magic's noisy," Hermione blurted, then winced. She did not know why she said it. Rick's eyes snapped to her. "Oh my God, a kid with a brain," he said. "Hi. Are you the only one here who reads?" Hermione's cheeks heated, but she forced herself to stand straight. "I read," she said. "A lot." "Good," Rick said. "Because everyone else is acting like I'm a demon with a bomb." Moody's magical eye whirred, fixed on Rick's wrist device. "You got a shield," Moody growled. "You got tech I don't like. You walk into a school full of kids. That makes you a problem until proven otherwise." Rick looked Moody up and down. "Nice eye," he said. "Very subtle. Very, I don't have trauma at all." Moody's jaw tightened. McGonagall stepped forward. "You threatened to destroy the castle." Rick shrugged. "I threaten to respond if you try to invade my mind or lock me in a cage. I like my freedom. I love my freedom. It's my main thing." Snape spoke, voice like a knife. "And yet you arrived here without warning, in possession of a device capable of tearing holes in space." Rick's mouth twisted. "Oh, that's what you call it? Space. Cute." Hermione watched him as he spoke. He was rude, yes. He was loud, but he was also watching everything. The instruments, the portraits, the small movements of people's hands near their wands, even the shape of the room. He was planning without looking like he was planning. Dumbledore lifted a hand slightly. "I will not attempt to invade your mind," Dumbledore said, "and I will not imprison you." Moody snorted. Dumbledore's gaze stayed steady, not without cause. Rick laughed again, but this time it was softer. "Okay," Rick said. "So you're the good guy leader. You're doing the calm voice thing. You want trust. Great. I don't have any to spare." Dumbledore nodded, like that was honest. "Then let us begin with simple questions," Dumbledore said. "Where do you come from?" Rick's eyes flicked toward the window. "Somewhere better," he said. "Somewhere worse. Depends on the day." "Another world," Hermione said carefully. Rick stared at her for a second, then smirked. "Yeah," he said. "Another world. Another reality. Whatever word you use when you realize you're not special." McGonagall's lips thinned. "And how did you come here?" Rick raised his portal device. The green center was cracked. "This," he said, "portal tech, not magic, science. It got damaged. I landed in your wizard theme park." Snape's eyes narrowed. "Science." Rick gave him a look. "Yeah, you know, cause and effect, rules, stuff that doesn't care about your feelings." Hermione felt her heart beat faster. Rules. She liked rules. Even in magic, there were rules, even if people did not always admit it. Dumbledore's voice stayed calm. "If you can travel between worlds, you may be pursued." Rick's face changed for half a second. Not fear, not sadness. Something like a door closing. "I'm not here because someone chased me," Rick said. "I'm here because my exit broke." Moody leaned forward. "So, you need parts?" Rick pointed at him. "I need a workspace. I need a lab. A real lab. Not a stone room full of candles and talking paintings." One portrait gasped in offense. Rick ignored it. He walked to the table of silver instruments and leaned close, eyes narrowing. A small device clicked and chimed. He pulled a tiny scanner from his pocket and ran it near the instrument. The silver device whirred faster. Sparks jumped. McGonagall snapped, "Do not touch." Rick's wrist beeped. The silver instrument shut off like it had been unplugged. Everyone stared. Rick stood upright, looking pleased with himself. "Okay," he said. "So your magic tools have inputs. They have patterns. They have rules." Hermione almost forgot to breathe. Dumbledore's face did not change, but his eyes sharpened. "You can interfere with enchanted objects," Dumbledore said. Rick shrugged. "I can interfere with most things. That's kind of my brand." Snape's voice was quiet. "And what is your purpose here, Mr. Sanchez?" Rick pointed at the broken portal device. "Fix this. Leave. Forget you people exist. That's the plan." Hermione blurted, "You can just leave? Across worlds?" Rick looked at her like she asked if water was wet. "Yes," he said. "That's literally what I do." Dumbledore took a step closer. "If you can leave, then you can also return." Rick's eyes went sharp. "I can do a lot of things. The question is what I want to do." Moody shifted, hand near his wand. "We can't let you walk around a school with tech like that." Rick scoffed. "You already let kids walk around with instant death sticks. Don't pretend you care about safety now." McGonagall's cheeks went pink with anger. "Our wands are not tools," Rick finished. "They're tools, like mine. The difference is you act like your tool is holy." Hermione saw Dumbledore watch Rick with a kind of careful interest, like he was studying a storm cloud to decide where it would strike. Dumbledore's voice stayed light. "Perhaps we can make an agreement." Rick lifted an eyebrow. "I'm listening, but if it includes chains, I'm not." "No chains," Dumbledore said. "A room, a place to work, supervision, for the sake of the children. And in return, you will not harm any student or staff member." Rick made a face like the words tasted bad. "I'm not going to hurt kids." Snape's eyes narrowed. "You threatened the castle." Rick rolled his eyes. "I threatened a response to mind control. You want to put me in a box. I don't go in boxes." Hermione spoke before she could stop herself. If you're so powerful, why are you like this? The room went very still. Rick's gaze snapped to her, hard. Hermione felt her stomach twist. She had crossed a line. Then Rick snorted, like he had heard the question 100 times. Because, Rick said, being smart doesn't make you happy. It just makes you faster at seeing how bad things can get. Dumbledore watched him. And yet, you keep moving. Rick's mouth twitched. Yeah, that's the curse. You don't stop. A quiet knock sounded at the office door. Dumbledore lifted a hand. The door opened without anyone touching it. A small ministry official stepped in, pale and sweating. Headmaster, the man said quickly, eyes flicking to Rick, then away. The minister has been informed. He is on his way. With Madame Umbridge. McGonagall's expression turned grim. Hermione felt a cold knot in her chest. Umbridge meant trouble even when there wasn't a portal man in the castle. Rick blinked. Minister? Dumbledore's smile thinned. Our government. Rick made a sound like disgust. Oh, great. Bureaucrats. My favorite predator. Moody muttered. Told you. Dumbledore's voice stayed calm. You may remain here, Mr. Sanchez, but you must understand. Rick waved a hand. I get it. Politics. Fear. People who want to control what they don't understand. He looked around the office again. His eyes landed on a dusty cabinet that held odd magical items. He walked to it without asking. McGonagall's wand lifted. Rick didn't even look at her. He grabbed a piece of parchment and a quill from Dumbledore's desk and started writing on the parchment like it was a clipboard. He wrote big labels in messy letters. Ward Layer 1. Ward Layer 2. Weird sentient building response. Candle suspension system. Low priority. Hermione couldn't help it. You're making a list. Rick glanced at her. Yeah. I'm mapping your haunted school. Snape's lips curled. Hogwarts is not haunted. Rick looked at the portraits that were whispering about him. Sure, he said. Whatever you need to tell yourself. Dumbledore watched the list, then watched Rick. Mr. Sanchez, Dumbledore said, may I ask one more question? Rick sighed. Fine. What do you call your device? Dumbledore asked, nodding at the portal tool. Rick looked at it like it was a pet that betrayed him. Portal gun, he said. Hermione repeated it in her mind like a spell. Portal, gun. Dumbledore nodded once. Then you are here, with a broken portal gun, in a school at war. Rick paused, head tilting slightly. War? He echoed, like that word finally made the room make sense. McGonagall's voice was tight. Yes. Rick's eyes sharpened. With who? No one answered at once. Then Dumbledore spoke, very softly. A man who fears death more than anything. Rick stared at him. For a moment, the rude mask slipped, just a little. Then it came back on, thicker than before. Great, Rick said. So you've got a death-obsessed wizard cult leader and a government that wets itself. And now I'm stuck here with a broken portal gun. He looked down at his list and added one more line. Local big bad, fears death. He tapped the parchment with the quill. Fine, Rick said. Give me a room, give me tools, and tell your minister that if she tries to put a leash on me, I'm going to make her regret having hands. Moody leaned closer to Dumbledore. He's dangerous. Dumbledore's voice stayed quiet. Yes. And you're still going to let him stay? Dumbledore looked at the door, as if he could already hear the ministry marching up the stairs. I will not throw a match into dry grass, Dumbledore said. Rick lifted his portal gun and stared at the cracked green core. And I'm not going to sit in your office while your government tries to make me their pet, he muttered. He pressed a button. The device buzzed weakly. Nothing opened. Rick's jaw clenched. For the first time, Hermione saw the simplest truth. He really was stuck. And that meant everyone else was stuck with him. 2 days later, Hogwarts tried to pretend it was normal. It failed. Students whispered about the Muggle wizard who blocked spells with invisible walls. Some said he was a dark wizard. Some said he was a demon. Some said he was a genius from the future. Hermione knew only this. He was not magic, and he was not Not magic either. He was something new. Rick's room became an abandoned classroom near a disused corridor. The walls were stone. The windows were narrow. It smelled like dust and old chalk. Rick hated it. So he changed it. He didn't use spells. He used gadgets that unfolded like metal flowers. He set up a humming power source that Moody hated on sight. He taped parchment labels everywhere, like Hogwarts was a lab that forgot it was a castle. Do not touch. This bites. If this beeps, run. Ward interference node, probably. McGonagall inspected the room once and left with a tight mouth. Snape inspected it twice and left even tighter. Moody inspected it every day, and the traps in the hallway grew quietly more serious. Dumbledore let it happen, but he also had Fawkes appear at odd times, watching like a silent warning. And the Ministry did not stop. Umbridge arrived with a smile that was not a smile, wearing pink like it was armor. She brought papers. She brought rules. She brought the idea that Hogwarts belonged to her if she wrote enough words. Rick listened to her for exactly 12 seconds before he laughed. "Okay," he said, loud enough for her to hear. "So you're the evil kindergarten teacher." Umbridge's smile twitched. "I beg your pardon?" Rick leaned back in his chair, boots on a table that used to hold textbooks. "Your vibe," he said. "It's I torture people with manners." Umbridge's cheeks pinked with anger. "Headmaster." Dumbledore calm said, "Mr. Sanchez is our guest." "A dangerous guest," Umbridge snapped. "He is to be taken into Ministry custody for proper assessment." Rick's wrist device beeped. A tiny drone rose from behind his chair and hovered at Umbridge's eye level. It projected a thin, glowing line across her paperwork, scanning it. Umbridge froze, eyes wide. Rick watched her like she was a bug. "No," he said. "You don't get custody. I'm not a suitcase." Umbridge's voice went high and sweet. "We are simply ensuring the safety of our children." Rick pointed at the hallway outside, where kids walked around with wands. "Yeah," he said, "super safe." Dumbledore ended the meeting before it became a disaster. But the damage was done. The Ministry felt insulted. Umbridge felt humiliated. And when those people felt small, they always tried to make someone else feel smaller. Hermione noticed something else, too. The castle wards felt different. Not broken, not weak, but tense. Like they were bracing around Rick's devices, adapting in their own slow, ancient way. And one night, as Hermione walked back from the library, she saw Rick alone in his lab room, face lit green by his cracked portal gun, whispering to himself while he scribbled on parchment. "Come on," he muttered. "Show me your rules." Hermione should have walked away. Instead, she knocked. Rick looked up, annoyed. Then he saw it was her. "What?" he said. "You here to ask more personal questions?" Hermione swallowed. "I think I can help." Rick stared at her like she had offered him a rock. "You're a kid," he said. "I'm a kid who knows magic," Hermione said. "And you don't." Rick snorted. "I know systems. Magic is a system wearing a costume." Hermione's eyes narrowed. "Then let me show you the costume." Rick paused. Then, with an annoyed sigh, he waved her in. "Fine," he said. "Teach me your haunted physics." Hermione stepped inside. And outside the castle, far from Hogwarts, masked figures gathered. They had heard the rumors. A strange man who could stop spells with air. A strange weapon that could cut through distance. A crack in the world that smelled like power. And their master, cold and patient, listened. He did not rush. He smiled without warmth. Because predators did not fear new toys. They learned how to use them. The first big strike did not come at Hogwarts. It came at the place Hogwarts students went to feel normal. Hogsmeade. It was a Saturday. Snow-dusted rooftops. The air smelled like butterbeer and smoke from warm fires. Harry, Ron, and Hermione walked with their cloaks pulled tight, trying to enjoy the only village that belonged to them. They failed, because war followed them like a shadow. Hermione kept glancing at the road behind them, heart tight. She still couldn't believe Rick had been allowed to stay. Harry noticed her face. "He's not coming," he said quietly. "I know," Hermione said. "He said he doesn't do field trips." Ron huffed. "Good. Let him stay in his weird room. They turned a corner near Honeydukes. Then the air went cold. Not winter cold. Ron cold. Harry's scar burned like a hot needle. He stopped so fast, Ron nearly walked into him. "Harry," Ron said. Harry's hand went to his forehead. His stomach twisted. Hermione's voice shook. "Harry?" He didn't answer. A scream cut through the street. People turned. Brooms dropped. A shop door slammed shut. From the far end of the road, smoke rose in a black coil. Then the first masked figure appeared. A Death Eater. Then another. Then 5 more. They moved like they owned the road. Wands raised, not caring who saw. People ran. Some fell. A mother yanked her child into a doorway and slammed the door. Harry's heart hammered. Ron's face went pale. "They're here." Hermione's mind screamed, "Why Hogsmeade? Why now?" A spell flew. It slammed into a nearby lamppost and blasted it apart. Wood and metal burst into the street. Harry pulled his wand, but he knew it wasn't enough. The Death Eaters weren't looking at the shops. They were looking around like they were searching for something. Or someone. One of them raised a wand and shouted, "Bring out the outsider! The one who blocks spells!" Hermione's stomach dropped. "They're here for him," she whispered. Harry's eyes narrowed through the pain. How do they know? A Death Eater flicked his wand. A shop window shattered. Glass rained down. People screamed again. Harry stepped forward. Ron grabbed his arm. "Harry, don't." Harry shook him off. "If we run, they'll hurt everyone." Hermione's voice was tight. "We need the order." Harry looked around, scanning for help. He saw Madame Rosmerta duck behind her bar. He saw a man in a hood run toward the trees, probably to send word. But the Death Eaters were already closing in. A wand pointed at Harry. A voice hissed, delighted. "There you are." Harry's blood went cold. Bellatrix Lestrange stepped into view like she had walked out of a nightmare. Her eyes were wide and bright. Her smile was sharp. "Come," she purred. "Your master will be so pleased." Harry lifted his wand. "You're not taking me." Bellatrix laughed. "Oh, I'm not here for you, darling." She leaned forward slightly and called out, voice loud enough to carry down the street. "Come out, science man. We want your toy." Hermione's hands shook. Then a new sound cut across the chaos. A buzzing hum, low and steady, like a machine waking up. A green circle flared open above the street. Not a wild tear this time, but a clean ring. Rick Sanchez stepped out in midair. He dropped 3 feet, landed in a crouch, and stood up like he had been born annoyed. He wore the same battered coat. His hair was still a mess. A strap ran across his chest, holding a small box full of blinking tools. He looked around at the masks, the wands, the broken street. He sighed, deep and tired. "Seriously," he said. "I leave you people alone for 5 minutes." Hermione stared. He came. Ron's mouth hung open. "How did he?" Rick pointed his portal gun at the ground. A small metal disc popped out and skittered across the street like a beetle. Another disc, then another. He didn't even glance at Harry and his friends yet. He was already building the battlefield. Bellatrix's grin widened. "There you are." Rick finally looked at her. He scanned her face like she was a lab specimen. Then he glanced at the Death Eaters beside her. "Masks," he said. "Capes. Cult behavior. Okay, I get it. You're the bad guys." Bellatrix lifted her wand. "Crucio." Rick's wrist beeped. A clear shield snapped into place between them. Bellatrix's curse hit it and splashed away like it was thrown into a wall of water. Bellatrix blinked, then laughed harder. "Oh, I like you." Rick rolled his eyes. "Yeah, you seem like a person who likes a lot of bad ideas." A Death Eater on the left fired a blasting curse at Rick's feet. Rick stepped aside like he had already seen it coming. The curse slammed into the street and exploded, throwing snow and stone. Rick tapped his wrist again. A portal opened under the Death Eater who cast it. The Death Eater dropped with a shout and vanished. The portal snapped shut. Hermione's breath caught. Ron gasped. "Where did he go?" Rick didn't look back. "Somewhere safe-ish," Rick muttered. like a padded box. He'll be fine unless he panics and breaks his own neck. That's on him. Harry stared at Rick, shock mixing with anger and awe. Rick was a human, just a man, but he moved like the street was his. Bellatrix spun, firing another curse. Rick's shield caught it again. Rick's face tightened with irritation. "You know," he said, "I was doing research." Bellatrix tilted her head. "Research?" Rick pointed at her wand. "Yeah, your little stick-waving system. I was mapping it, and now you show up like toddlers with guns." A Death Eater tried a different spell, a binding curse that snaked like ropes. It hit Rick's shield and stuck for a moment, tugging, like it wanted to grab the shield itself. Rick's eyes flicked down. "Oh, that one interacts with force fields. Cute." He pulled a small device from his box and tossed it. It stuck to the binding curse like a clamp. The binding curse fizzled and died. Bellatrix's smile faltered for the first time. "Not magic," she whispered, almost offended. Rick shrugged. "Magic, tech, whatever. It's all inputs and outputs." Behind Rick, a bright flash exploded at the far end of the street. Order members apparated in, wands out. Moody appeared with them, limping hard but looking ready to murder the sky. McGonagall arrived a heartbeat later, cloak snapping like a banner. The street filled with dueling light. Harry's chest tightened with relief. Then it tightened with fear again, because this many spells in one small place meant people could die. Moody's voice roared, "Get the kids back!" McGonagall saw Harry and the others and snapped, "Potter, move!" Harry wanted to argue, but Rick spoke first. "Hey!" Rick shouted over the chaos. "Scarhead! Bookbrain! Redhead!" Ron flinched at Redhead. Rick jerked his head toward an alley. "Get behind the wall, now. This is not your weight class." Harry's anger flared. "Don't tell me." A curse blasted a hole in the shop wall near them. Stone exploded. Hermione grabbed Harry's sleeve and yanked him back. "Harry," she hissed, "move." They ran into the alley. From there, Harry watched the fight. McGonagall dueled 2 Death Eaters at once, sharp and fast, turning a thrown knife into a flock of birds mid-air. Moody fired stunners like he was punching with light. Order members formed shields to protect civilians. And in the center, Rick acted like a storm. He didn't throw punches. He threw solutions. A Death Eater tried to flank him. Rick opened a portal beside himself and stepped through it, reappearing behind the attacker. He shoved a small device onto the Death Eater's wand arm. It buzzed. The Death Eater's hand went numb. The wand fell. Rick kicked the wand away like he was clearing trash. Bellatrix lunged, faster than Harry expected, spells snapping out in quick chains. Rick's shield flickered as it absorbed them, not because it was weak, because the spells were strange, layered, and stubborn. Rick's face turned serious. For the first time, he looked like he was actually trying. "Okay," he muttered. "So you've got types. Pain, force, binding. Some stuff has tracking, some stuff has intent." He tapped his wrist. A hologram-like display flickered in front of him for half a second. Numbers, shapes, lines. Hermione's eyes widened even from the alley. He was reading spells like data. Bellatrix screamed a curse that made the air feel sharp. The shield shimmered. Rick's device beeped a warning. He stepped back, quick. "Yeah, no," he said, "not letting the insane lady touch my nervous system." He snapped his fingers. The metal discs he had thrown earlier all lit up at once. A thin grid of light flashed across the street, low to the ground. A Death Eater ran forward and hit the grid. He jerked like he hit an invisible wall, then collapsed, legs twitching. Not dead, stunned, like his body forgot how to obey. Moody's magical eye locked on Rick's discs. "What the hell is that?" Rick shouted back without looking. "Non-lethal crowd control. You're welcome." McGonagall's eyes flicked to Rick, quick. She hated him. She also understood results. Bellatrix, however, looked furious. She pointed at the discs and shrieked, "Break them!" 2 Death Eaters fired, blasting curses at the ground. The blasts hit. The discs stayed. The stone around them cracked, but the discs hummed on, protected by a thin field. Ron whispered from beside Harry, voice shaking, "He made A magic-proof trap. Hermione corrected softly. Not magic-proof, just resistant. Harry watched Rick take a step forward into the center of the street, like he was done being polite. Bellatrix hissed, "You think you're safe behind your little glass?" Rick tilted his head. "No." Then he lifted his portal gun. He aimed it at the open air behind Bellatrix. A green portal opened. Not under someone. Not beside someone. Behind someone. Bellatrix twisted fast, but not fast enough to stop what Rick did next. Rick tossed a small device through the portal. It vanished. Then it appeared behind Bellatrix, dropping out of the other portal. It stuck to the back of her robe like a leech. Bellatrix screamed and ripped at it, fingers clawing. The device beeped, loud and cheerful. Rick grinned, mean. "Tracker," he said. "Let's see where your creepy clubhouse is." Bellatrix's eyes went wide with real hate. She fired a curse at Rick that looked different from the others, darker, thicker. Rick's shield took it. The shield did not shatter, but it groaned. It groaned like it had been pushed by something heavy. Rick's grin vanished. He took one step back, fast. "Okay," he said, voice low. "That's not normal." Hermione's heart hammered. Even Rick was surprised. Moody shouted Sanchez down. Bellatrix screamed again. "You don't get to mark me." She hurled another curse. Rick didn't block it this time. He opened a portal in front of it. The curse vanished into green. A half-second later, a portal opened above the empty street. The curse shot out and slammed into a pile of snow, exploding harmlessly. Harry stared, breath caught. Rick was redirecting spells like they were thrown rocks. But Bellatrix didn't stop. She moved like she wanted to hurt. She darted left, then right, like a dancer with knives, trying to find an angle around Rick's portals and shields. Rick's face tightened. He tapped his wrist again. A new field snapped on, close to his body, like a second skin. Bellatrix lunged forward, wand aimed at his face. Rick raised his free hand. A small metal rod shot out from his sleeve with a snap. It struck Bellatrix's wand hand. Not hard enough to break bones, hard enough to make her drop the wand. Her wand clattered on the stone. For one perfect second, Bellatrix looked shocked. Then she laughed. She lunged for her wand, and a portal opened under it. The wand fell into green and vanished. Bellatrix's laugh died. Rick leaned close, eyes cold. "Yeah," he said. "No wand for you." Bellatrix's face twisted into rage. Moody fired a stunner at her. McGonagall followed with a binding spell. Bellatrix, furious and still dangerous even without her wand, sprang backward, dodging like a wild animal. A Death Eater grabbed her arm. Then, with a loud crack, they apparated away. Several other Death Eaters followed, retreating in a rush. The street fell into a strange silence. Smoke drifted. Snow fell through it. Civilians peeked from doorways with wide eyes. Order members held their wands up, breathing hard. Rick stood in the center like the calm part of a storm, shoulders rising and falling. He looked around, annoyed. "Wow," he said. "Your bad guys are dramatic." Moody stormed toward him, rage in every step. "You brought them here," Moody growled. "They called for you." Rick looked at him like Moody was slow. "No," Rick said. "They came because they think my tech solves their problems. That's not on me. That's on them being idiots." McGonagall snapped. "People could have died." Rick gestured at the street. "They didn't. You're welcome." Harry stepped out of the alley, wand still in hand. His scar burned. His face was pale. He walked straight toward Rick. Rick turned his head, eyes landing on Harry like he was finally noticing a detail. Harry stared at him. "They're here because of you." Rick stared back. "They're here because your world has monsters." Harry's voice shook with anger. "So leave." Rick's mouth twitched like he might laugh. But he didn't. He lifted his portal gun. The cracked green core flickered weakly. Rick's eyes narrowed, tired. "I would," he said, "if this stupid thing worked." Hermione stepped forward beside Harry, heart pounding. "What did you do to Bellatrix?" she asked. Rick pointed at his wrist display. I tagged her, he said. If the tracker holds, I can find where they went. Moody's magical eye whirred. And then what? Rick's smile was thin. Then he said, I see what kind of death-obsessed wizard cult leader you're dealing with. McGonagall's face tightened. You were told about... I hear things, Rick said, and I can read fear on faces. It's not hard. Harry's scar flared again. He winced, hand going to his forehead. Rick noticed. His eyes sharpened. What's that? Rick asked, pointing at Harry's scar. That's not just a scar. Harry glared. It's none of your business. Rick's eyes stayed locked. It's a link, Rick said quietly. Like a bad wireless connection. Like someone left a piece of themselves in you. Hermione felt ice run through her. Rick looked at Harry with sudden, serious focus, like Harry had turned from kid into problem. And if I'm right, Rick said, voice low, then your bad guy is already inside your head. Harry's throat went dry. Moody swore under his breath. McGonagall's voice was tight. Enough. We return to the castle. Now. Rick didn't argue. He looked down at the broken street, the shattered glass, the frightened people. Then he looked at his wrist. The tracker signal blinked, faint but steady. Rick's mouth curled, not happy, but interested. Okay, he murmured. So the anomaly isn't just me. He turned and started walking toward the road back to Hogwarts, like he had decided something without telling anyone. Hermione hurried after him, unable to stop herself. Where are you going? She asked. Rick didn't look back. To my lab, he said. To do what your world refuses to do. Hermione's voice shook. And what is that? Rick's answer was simple, flat, and scary. Figure out the rules, he said. Then break the right ones. Behind them, far away, in a dark place where fear lived like dust, Bellatrix ripped the tracker off her robe too late. Her master's cold eyes watched the small device on the floor. He did not rage. He did not panic. He smiled, slow and sharp, like a chess player who had just been shown a new piece. And somewhere inside Hogwarts, the ancient wards tightened again, because the war had just learned a new language. The next morning, the Daily Prophet arrived early, like it could smell trouble. Hermione saw the bundle of newspapers slam onto the Gryffindor table before she even sat down. The headline was so big it felt like it was shouting, Mystery Man attacks in Hogsmeade. Is Hogwarts hiding a new weapon? A moving photo showed a green ring in the air over the street. It froze for a moment on Rick's face, half turned, eyes narrowed, like he was deciding which part of the world to insult first. Hermione's stomach twisted. Ron grabbed a paper and read 2 lines before his ears went red. They called him a wandless warlock and a dangerous foreign influence. Harry didn't touch the paper. His hand stayed on his scar like he was checking if it still belonged to him. Hermione scanned the words fast. The prophet said Rick had unknown powers. It said he resisted lawful arrest. It said Hogwarts was reckless. It did not mention the Death Eaters shouting for him first. It did not mention the curses fired into a street full of families. It didn't mention the truth. It never did. I hate them, Hermione said, voice low. Ron snorted. You hate everyone. Hermione ignored him. Her eyes caught a name in the article. Dolores Umbridge. She was quoted with a sweet smile and a sharp promise. The Ministry will take the necessary steps to ensure Hogwarts is not harboring dangerous elements. Harry finally spoke, quiet and hard. She means him. Hermione nodded. And us. Just then, a high, girlish laugh floated across the hall. Umbridge walked in wearing pink like she wanted everyone to know she had nothing to fear. She held a stack of papers and a quill that looked too sharp. Behind her walked 2 adult Ministry wizards, and a few older students who looked nervous and proud at the same time. Hermione recognized the proud look. It was the look of someone who got picked by power. Umbridge clapped her hands once. Good morning, children, she sang. I'm sure you've all seen the dreadful news. She smiled at the prophet headline like it was a gift. In light of last night's incident, Umbridge continued, the Ministry is issuing a temporary educational decree for your safety. Ron muttered, Here it comes. Umbridge's smile stretched wider. There will be increased inspections. Restricted areas will be monitored. And most importantly, all unusual items within the school will be registered and secured. Hermione's heart thumped. All unusual items. That meant Rick. That meant his lab. Harry pushed back his chair. You can't. Umbridge's eyes snapped to him, still smiling. Oh, Mr. Potter. I can. I truly can. She turned her head, looking down the staff table as if searching for Dumbledore. But Dumbledore was not in the hall. McGonagall sat stiff as stone, her mouth tight. Snape stared at his plate like it had insulted him. And at the far end, at the side door that led into corridors students weren't supposed to use, 2 suits of armor stood in a way Hermione hadn't seen before. They weren't just decoration. They were on watch. Hermione felt the castle itself holding its breath. Rick Sanchez did not read the Daily Prophet. Rick Sanchez barely read anything that wasn't trying to bite him. He was in his lab, which was really a classroom that had been bullied into obedience by machines and threats. Parchment labels covered the walls. Ward map do not smear. Spell types probably. Ministry equals control freaks. This box hums. If it stops humming, run. A small drone hovered over a table, projecting shaky lines in green. It was tracing a shape like a spider web. Hogwarts wards. Rick's eyes were bloodshot. His mouth tasted like stale booze and anger. He hadn't slept. He had replayed the Hogsmeade fight again and again in his head. Not because he was scared, because there were parts he didn't like. Bellatrix's dark curse had pushed his shield harder than normal. The binding spell had grabbed at the field itself. And Harry's scar. Rick tapped the side of his head. That's not a scar, he muttered again. That's a damn antenna. He held a small scanner close to a strip of enchanted metal he had borrowed from a suit of armor. The scanner beeped. The metal hummed back like it was annoyed. Rick scribbled on parchment. Magic has signal. Signal has pattern. Pattern has weakness. A knock hit the door. Rick didn't look up. If you're pink and smug, I'm lighting you on fire. The door opened anyway. Hermione stepped in, careful, like she was approaching a wild animal. Rick glanced at her and scoffed. Oh, it's book brain. Hermione swallowed. Umbridge is issuing decrees. She wants to seize your things. Rick waved a hand. Yeah, I could smell that coming. Like cheap perfume and control. Hermione looked around the room, eyes wide despite herself. There were glass jars filled with shimmering dust Rick had scraped from wardstones. There was a floating ring of metal spinning slowly, held up by magnets. There were chalk circles on the floor that weren't magical circles at all, but measurement marks. Why are you doing all this? Hermione asked. Rick's eyes stayed on his scanner. Because your whole world runs on a system nobody is willing to admit is a system. That's not why, Hermione said, more brave than she felt. You said you wanted to leave. Rick's jaw tightened. He shoved the scanner down on the table too hard. It clacked. I do want to leave, he snapped. I don't want to be here. I don't want to babysit a castle full of kids with death cults outside the gate. Hermione flinched, but she held her ground. Then why did you come to Hogsmeade? Rick's eyes flicked to her. For a second, he didn't have a rude answer ready. Then he scoffed. Because they were going to hurt people. Hermione's voice softened. So you do care? Rick's face hardened, like a door slamming. Don't do that. Hermione blinked. Do what? Rick pointed at her like she was the problem. Don't try to turn me into a hero. Heroes die. Heroes get used. Heroes get stupid. Hermione took a breath. You still saved them. Rick's hands trembled slightly as he grabbed another tool. I didn't save them, he said. I managed a situation. Hermione's eyes narrowed. That's just a different word. Rick leaned closer, voice low and dangerous. Listen, kid. I've seen worlds burn. I've seen people beg. I've fixed things. And it doesn't fix the hole inside you. You want to know why I'm like this? Hermione didn't answer. She couldn't. Rick's voice turned flat. Because caring is a trap. Silence filled the room. Then, from the corridor, footsteps approached. Many footsteps. Hermione's stomach dropped. They're coming. Rick's lips curled. Let them. He tapped his wrist. The doorway beeped. A thin field shimmered over the doorframe like clear ice. Hermione stared. You booby-trapped the door. Rick nodded, satisfied. Every door, every window, and the floor if it gets annoying. The door swung open hard. Umbridge walked in with 2 ministry wizards and 4 older students behind her. One of the students held a clipboard with trembling hands like it was an honor. Umbridge's smile was bright and cruel. Mr. Sanchez, she cooed. What a relief. We need to have a little talk. Rick leaned back in his chair, boots up again, like the room belonged to him. Do we? He said. Umbridge's eyes flicked to Hermione. Miss Granger, you may leave. Hermione didn't move. Rick glanced at her, then back at Umbridge. She stays. Umbridge's smile tightened. Excuse me? Rick spread his hands. She's my translator. You people can't even say please without sounding like a threat. The ministry wizard stepped forward. Sir, by order of the minister. Rick pointed at the wizard. Say order again and I'm going to demonstrate how fragile your teeth are. The students behind Umbridge gasped. Umbridge's smile stayed on, but her eyes went cold. Mr. Sanchez, your items are unregistered. They are a danger. We will be confiscating them for evaluation. Rick's wrist beeped once. Umbridge's clipboard snapped shut like it got punched by invisible hands. Her quill shot straight up and started writing in the air, fast, in big letters. Dolores Umbridge is not welcome here. Umbridge's mouth opened in shock. Hermione's eyes went wide. Rick didn't even look surprised. Yeah, he said. I trained your quill to tell the truth. Umbridge's face turned red. You, she hissed. Rick leaned forward, voice calm now, almost bored. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to turn around. You're going to walk out. And you're going to tell your minister that if he wants my tech, he can come take it himself. But he should bring an adult brain. Umbridge's smile snapped. You will not threaten the ministry inside a school. Rick shrugged. Watch me. The ministry wizard raised his wand. The moment he did, the clear field at the doorway shimmered, and then the wizard's wand hand stuck. Not to a wall, to the air. Like he had shoved his arm into thick glue. The wizard panicked and yanked. His shoulder jerked. He yelped. Rick sighed. Non-lethal deterrent. Stop sudden wand movement. Great for people who can't control their emotions. Umbridge's eyes flicked to the trapped wizard, then back to Rick. Her voice went soft and dangerous. You cannot stay here. Rick smiled without humor. I'm not staying for you. Umbridge turned to leave, stiff and shaking with rage. As she stepped through the doorway, the clear field made a tiny chirp. A puff of bright foam popped onto the back of her pink cardigan. Just a small splat, like spit. The older students snickered before they could stop themselves. Umbridge froze. Rick waved. Have a nice day. Umbridge left without looking back. Hermione let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Rick looked at her. Congrats, he said. You just made an enemy who uses rules like knives. Hermione swallowed. We already had her. Rick's eyes narrowed. Yeah, but now she's personal. That night, Harry couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the canopy above him, the curtains half drawn. Every sound made his body tense. His scar burned in slow pulses, like a warning light. He saw flashes when he closed his eyes. Dark corridors, cold laughter, a pale face with red eyes. Then, worse than all of it, he saw Rick's face in the middle of the vision, like a glitch. Voldemort was thinking about Rick. Harry sat up fast, breathing hard. Ron rolled over, groggy. What is it? Harry swallowed. He's thinking about him. Ron blinked. Who? Harry's voice was tight. Voldemort. Ron sat up too, fear waking him fully. What did you see? Harry hesitated. He hated saying it out loud. It made it real. He wants the portal thing, Harry whispered. He wants it bad. Ron stared. Of course he does. Who wouldn't? Harry rubbed his scar, eyes stinging. But it's not just that. He thinks Rick is a shortcut. Ron swallowed. A shortcut to what? Harry's voice cracked. To death. They sat in silence. Ron's face twisted. Then we tell Dumbledore. Harry nodded. They slipped out before dawn, moving under Harry's cloak. The castle felt colder at that hour. The hallways felt longer. When they reached the corridor near Rick's lab, they stopped. 2 suits of armor stood there again, their helmets faced forward like guards. A faint shimmer in the air marked an invisible barrier. Ron whispered. He put security on his door. Harry's scar gave a sharp throb. He didn't like how the castle was changing. He didn't like how Rick was changing it. They turned away and went straight to Dumbledore's office. Dumbledore listened without interrupting. His hands were folded. His face was gentle, but his eyes were heavy. "Thank you," he said when Harry finished. "This is important." Harry clenched his fists. "Then do something. He's going to come for Rick." Dumbledore nodded slowly. "I believe he will try." Ron blurted. "Then why is Rick even here? Why are we letting him?" Dumbledore's gaze softened. "Because Mr. Sanchez has already made himself part of the board, whether we like it or not." Harry felt his anger rise. "He doesn't even care about us." Dumbledore's voice was quiet. "Are you sure?" Harry hesitated, remembering Hogsmeade. Remembering Rick telling him to get behind a wall. Remembering Rick stepping into spells like he owned the street. Harry didn't answer. Dumbledore stood. "I will speak with Mr. Sanchez." Harry's voice sharpened. "He won't listen." Dumbledore gave a small smile. "Perhaps, but I am very good at listening first." As Harry and Ron left, Harry's scar pulsed again. And Harry knew, deep down, that Voldemort was already moving. In a dark manor far from Hogwarts, a fire crackled low. Voldemort sat like a shadow made solid. His pale face was still. His red eyes were fixed on a small object on the floor. A tracker. It was no bigger than a coin. A tiny light blinked, faint now, like it was dying. Bellatrix stood a few steps back, breathing hard, furious at herself. "My lord," she said, voice shaking with anger and shame. "It marked me. It—" Voldemort lifted one long finger. Bellatrix stopped at once. Voldemort's gaze stayed on the device. He did not smash it. He did not curse it. He watched it like a hunter watching footprints. "This is not magic," Voldemort said softly. Bellatrix whispered, "No, my lord." It felt wrong. Voldemort's lips barely moved. Wrong is simply unfamiliar. He leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing. "The castle allowed him inside," Voldemort murmured. "And now the castle will have to live with him." Bellatrix trembled. "Shall we kill him?" Voldemort's eyes flicked up, sharp. Bellatrix flinched. Voldemort's voice stayed calm. "If we kill him too soon, we learn nothing." He looked back at the tracker. "This man tears holes in space," Voldemort said. "Distance becomes meaningless. Walls become jokes. Secrets become weak." Bellatrix's eyes widened, hungry. "Yes." Voldemort's voice turned colder. "Which means he is either the greatest threat or the greatest tool." Bellatrix smiled again. "Wild. You will take him." Voldemort's gaze sharpened with something like interest. "I will offer him something," Voldemort said. Bellatrix whispered, "What could he want?" Voldemort's answer was simple. "A challenge," he said, "and the one thing every clever creature fears." Bellatrix leaned forward. "Death." Voldemort's eyes gleamed. "Not death," he corrected softly. "Meaninglessness." He sat back. "Prepare a message," Voldemort said. "Not a letter, not an owl. Something he will notice." Bellatrix's grin widened. "A trap?" Voldemort smiled without warmth. "A door," he said. "And we will see if he walks through it." By the end of the week, Hogwarts felt like it had 2 wars inside it. One war was outside, with Death Eaters and shadows and fear. The other war was inside, with Umbridge's decrees and ministry inspections and students being watched. Rick did not help the calm. He put up more security. He added more labels. He made the hallway outside his lab buzz faintly, like it was alive. He also started showing up in strange places, like he was checking the castle's pulse. Hermione caught him once in a corridor near the hidden passageways, pressing a sensor against a stone wall. "What are you doing?" she asked. Rick didn't look up. "Mapping ward layers." Hermione frowned. "Why?" Rick finally glanced at her. "Because your wards reacted to my stuff. That means they're not just barriers, they're adaptive." Hermione blinked. "Adaptive?" Rick shrugged. "They learn. Like an immune system." Hermione's eyes widened. That's incredible." Rick scoffed. "It's inconvenient." Hermione followed him as he moved, her mind racing. "If it learns, then maybe it can." "Reject me," Rick finished. "Yeah, that's on the list." He slapped a new label on a wall. "Castle might try to eat my tech." Hermione stared. "That's not how." Rick cut her off. "It's exactly how. The castle is alive enough to be picky." Hermione swallowed. "Dumbledore said he would talk to you." Rick grunted. "Yeah, the beard man keeps trying to have feelings at me." Hermione's mouth twitched despite herself. "He's trying to help." Rick's eyes narrowed. "Helping is what people say when they want you to lower your guard." Hermione's voice rose, frustrated. "Not everyone is like you." Rick stopped walking. Hermione nearly bumped into him. Rick looked at her, eyes tired. "No," he said softly. "You're not. That's the problem." Before Hermione could answer, the air beside them popped. A small paper plane, an enchanted memo, zoomed down the corridor and slammed into Hermione's chest. She grabbed it, her fingers tingled. The paper was warm. It was not from the Ministry. Hermione opened it carefully. There was no handwriting. There was a symbol burned into the paper, a dark mark, faint but clear. And under it, in neat, simple letters, as if someone was mocking her, "We can talk about death." Hermione's blood went cold. Rick leaned in, eyes narrowing. "That for you?" Hermione shook her head fast. "No. It's for..." Rick snatched the paper, scanned it with a small device, then frowned. "Huh," he muttered. "That's not a normal communication method. It's magical, but it's also anchored." Hermione whispered, "It's him." Rick looked at her. "Who's him?" Hermione's throat tightened. "Voldemort." Rick's eyebrows lifted. "Okay," he said slowly. "So that's the name of your death guy." Hermione grabbed the memo back. "He's trying to lure you." Rick stared at the burned words. Then he smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who just got dared. "Finally," Rick said. "Someone speaking my language." Hermione's stomach sank. "Rick, no." Rick waved her off. "Relax. I'm not going to join your evil wizard club. I'm going to find out what he knows." Hermione's voice shook. "He kills people." Rick's eyes went flat. "So do your Ministry friends. They just do it slower." Hermione grabbed his sleeve. "Promise me you won't do something stupid." Rick looked down at her hand like it was a strange object. Then he shrugged. "I don't do promises." He walked away, leaving Hermione standing in the corridor with cold fear in her chest. And somewhere deep in the castle, Harry's scar flared like an alarm. That night, Dumbledore came to Rick's lab. He did not bring guards. He did not bring threats. He knocked once and waited. Rick opened the door with a device in his hand and a look on his face that said, "Try something." Dumbledore stepped inside, calm. "This room has changed," Dumbledore said, looking around at the labels, the humming machines, the ward maps. Rick snorted. "Yeah, it's better now." Dumbledore's eyes rested on one parchment in particular. "Scarlink equals soul anchor?" Dumbledore's voice softened. "You have been thinking about Harry." Rick's mouth tightened. "Kid's got a problem." Dumbledore nodded. "Yes." Rick looked up sharply. "You already knew?" Dumbledore's gaze stayed steady. "I knew enough to be afraid. I did not know how to fix it." Rick scoffed. "So you let a kid walk around with a piece of a monster in his head?" Dumbledore's face did not flinch, but his eyes dimmed. "I protected him as best I could." Rick pointed at the parchment. "Your monster is doing something with souls, or pieces of souls. That's why the Scarlink feels like an antenna." Dumbledore's voice was quiet. Horcruxes. Rick blinked. Horror what? Dumbledore explained in simple words, pieces of soul hidden in objects to keep living. Rick stared for a long moment. Then he let out a low whistle. That, Rick said, is disgusting. Dumbledore watched him. And yet you are interested. Rick's eyes flicked to the memo Hermione had shown him earlier, now pinned to a board. We can talk about death. Rick's voice turned dry. He thinks he can bait me with death hacks. Dumbledore's gaze sharpened. You received a message. Rick didn't deny it. Dumbledore spoke gently, but there was steel under it. Mr. Sanchez, Voldemort is not a man you can treat like a puzzle without teeth. Rick looked at him. And you think I'm toothless? Dumbledore didn't answer that. He didn't need to. Rick's wrist device beeped softly, as if annoyed by the silence. Dumbledore's voice softened. If you go to him, you risk becoming what he wants. Rick's laugh was short. What he wants is control. He's not special. Dumbledore's eyes stayed on Rick. He is patient. Rick's smile faded a little. Dumbledore took a breath. If you truly wish to understand death magic, there is a place. Rick's head tilted. Yeah? Dumbledore hesitated, then spoke the words like they were heavy. The Department of Mysteries, he said. Rick's eyes lit up. Of course, Rick muttered. Of course your government has a secret basement full of mysteries. Dumbledore's voice stayed calm. It is protected. It is watched. And it is dangerous. Rick nodded like that made it more fun. Perfect. Dumbledore's gaze turned stern. I did not say you could go. Rick leaned back. Oh, I'm going. The question is whether I'm going alone. Dumbledore's eyes narrowed. You would take students. Rick pointed at the parchment about Harry's scar. The kid is already in it. You just pretend he's not. Dumbledore's jaw tightened. Rick's voice turned colder. Here's the deal, Beardman. Your enemy is using soul anchors. Your government is trying to steal my tech, and your castle is adapting to me like I'm a virus. I need answers. Dumbledore watched him for a long moment. Then he said softly, And what do you want, Mr. Sanchez? Rick opened his mouth to say something rude. He stopped. For a second, his eyes went distant, like a memory tried to crawl up his throat. Then he swallowed it down. I want the rules, Rick said, voice flat. I want to know what's real here. Dumbledore nodded, very slowly. Then we must be careful. Rick shrugged. Careful is not really my thing. Dumbledore's eyes softened. It may need to be. Rick didn't answer. But the plan had already started forming in his head like a machine assembling itself. 2 nights later, Hogwarts slept, but the war did not. Harry stood in an empty classroom with Hermione and Ron, cloaks on, wands ready. His heart hammered so hard he could feel it in his throat. Moody stood by the door, checking the hallway, his magical eye whirring like a small engine. And Rick Sanchez stood in the center of the room with his portal gun in one hand and a small box of gadgets in the other. Ron looked like he might faint. You're taking us into the ministry, Ron whispered. Into the place that hates us. Rick glanced at him. Yeah. Ron swallowed. Why? Rick's answer was simple. Because they have toys. Hermione hissed. Rick. Rick rolled his eyes. Fine. Because they have information. You happy? Harry's scar pulsed like it knew what they were doing. Moody's voice was low and angry. I still think this is insane. Rick pointed at him. You're the one who walks around with a magic eye and a hip flask full of paranoia. Don't judge me. Moody's jaw tightened. If we get caught, kids, you do exactly what I say. Rick snorted. Yeah, and if you get caught, you do what I say. Fair's fair. Moody looked like he wanted to punch him. Harry stepped forward. We don't have time. Rick glanced at Harry, eyes narrowing. Scars buzzing? Harry nodded. He's thinking again. Rick's mouth twisted. Of course he is. Hermione hugged her cloak tighter. Dumbledore knows we're going? Moody growled. He didn't approve it. Rick smirked. He didn't stop it either. That was true, and it made Hermione feel sick. Rick lifted the portal gun. The cracked green core flickered. Rick tapped it, annoyed, then slapped a small stabilizer onto the side. Don't die. he muttered at it. Not tonight. He aimed at the far wall. A green ring opened, clean and bright. The air smelled sharp, like metal and rain. On the other side was darkness and stone and a faint echo that made Hermione's ears feel strange. Ron whispered, "I hate this." Rick stepped through first without fear. Moody followed. Wand up. Harry, Hermione, and Ron went after. The world flipped. Then they were standing in a corridor that felt wrong. It wasn't like Hogwarts. Hogwarts breathed. This place felt empty. Cold. Like a building that didn't care who lived or died inside it. Moody whispered, "Ministry tunnels." Rick looked around, scanning. "Yeah," he said. "Your government built itself a secret spine." Hermione's voice was tight. "Where's the Department of Mysteries?" Moody pointed. "Down." They moved fast, footsteps soft. The deeper they went, the stranger the air became. Harry's scar burned in quick pulses now, like it was calling him. They reached a black door with no handle. It sat alone at the end of a corridor like a warning. Moody lifted his wand, ready to blast it. Rick put a hand up. "Don't." He stepped forward and pressed a small device against the door. It beeped. The door did nothing. Rick frowned. "It's not locked. It's deciding." Hermione whispered. "The department reacts to people." Rick blinked. "Seriously? Your doors have feelings?" Moody growled. "Stop talking and get it open." Rick sighed and pulled a different tool out, a thin metal strip with glowing dots. He slid it into the seam of the door like a knife. The dots lit up. The door shuddered. For a second, Hermione felt like the hallway was looking at them. Then the door swung open. Inside was a round room with shelves that reached high, packed with glowing glass orbs. Prophecies. Harry's scar flared so hard he stumbled. Hermione grabbed his arm. "Harry!" Harry's breathing turned rough. The room pulled at him. It felt like the orbs were whispering his name. Rick scanned the shelves with quick, hungry focus. "Okay," he muttered. "So this is a data vault." Moody snapped. "Do not touch anything." Rick glanced at him like he was boring. "I'm going to touch everything." Hermione hissed, "Rick." Rick moved down the aisle, eyes scanning labels on the shelves. Harry forced himself forward, sweat on his forehead. He knew there was a prophecy about him. He had heard it once, like a shadow in Dumbledore's words. His scar burned, like it wanted the orb. Ron whispered, "This place is giving me goosebumps." Rick's voice cut through, sharp. "There." He stopped in front of a shelf and pointed. A small label read, S. S. And then something else Hermione couldn't see clearly. Rick leaned in and scanned it. His wrist display flickered. "Yep," Rick said. "This one is hot." Moody's wand snapped up. "Don't." Too late. Rick didn't grab the orb with his hands. He opened a small field around it, like an invisible glove, and lifted it off the shelf without touching the glass. The orb glowed brighter, like it noticed it was being moved. Harry's scar screamed with pain. He dropped to one knee, panting. Hermione's eyes filled with panic. "Harry!" Rick looked at Harry, then at the orb, then back. "Oh," he said quietly. "Yeah, that's connected." Moody snarled, "Put it back." Rick shook his head once. "No, we're learning." The room shifted. A soft sound filled the air. Not a voice, not a spell. More like a warning tone. Hermione's stomach dropped. "The department knows." Then the door behind them slammed shut on its own. Ron yelped, "We're trapped!" Moody spun. Wand ready. Rick stayed calm, eyes bright. "Good. Now it gets interesting." The shelves trembled. Orbs rattled. A cold wind swept through the room, even though there were no windows. Harry's scar burned so hard he bit down on a cry. Hermione's mind raced. It's reacting to the prophecy being moved. Rick nodded, almost pleased. "Yep, the system defends the data." Moody snapped, "Put it down, Sanchez." Rick didn't. He slid the orb into a padded case on his chest like it was a fragile battery. Hermione stared at him. "You stole it." Rick looked at her like she was slow. "Borrowed." Moody growled, "We don't have time for this." As if the department agreed, the room changed. A side wall melted into a doorway that hadn't been there. Darkness waited beyond it. Harry's scar tugged toward it like a hook in his forehead. Ron whispered, "That wasn't there." Hermione's voice shook. "The rooms move." Rick's eyes gleamed. "Dynamic architecture. Love it." Moody grabbed Rick's sleeve. "We leave. Now." Rick yanked free. "We're not done." Hermione stepped between them, voice sharp. "Stop, both of you." They froze, just for a second. Hermione looked at Rick. "You wanted the rules. Fine. But this place is dangerous. If Harry collapses, we lose everything." Rick's eyes flicked to Harry, who was sweating and shaking, face pale. Rick's jaw tightened. Then he sighed, annoyed like he hated being reasonable. "Fine," he snapped. "We move, but we take the orb." Moody looked like he might explode, but he nodded once. They stepped through the new doorway, and the world turned strange. They entered a room full of clocks. Not normal clocks. Huge ones. Tiny ones. Floating ones. Clocks with hands that moved backward. Clocks that had no hands at all. Time. Hermione's skin prickled. Rick whispered, almost impressed. "Okay, time lab." Moody's voice was hard. "Don't touch anything." Ron whispered, "Why is it so quiet?" Then Hermione heard it. Ticking. Not from one clock. From all of them. Layered together. Harry's scar pulsed again, but it wasn't just pain now. It was pulling him deeper. Rick moved forward, scanning. A glass case in the center held a small hourglass device with a chain. Hermione's eyes widened. Time turners. Rick leaned close. "So you have time travel. Great. Every universe has to have someone being irresponsible." Moody grabbed Rick's arm hard. "No." Rick yanked away. "Relax. I'm not going to wear it like jewelry." The room trembled again. A loud crack echoed behind them. They spun. The door they came through was gone. In its place was a different door, slightly open. A shadow moved through the gap. Moody's magical eye whirred fast. "We're not alone." Harry's scar burned like fire. He heard a voice in his head, cold and soft. "He is here." Harry's breath hitched. "Voldemort." Hermione grabbed him. "Harry, focus." The door swung wider. Masked figures stepped in, silent and ready. Death Eaters. Bellatrix was among them, hair wild, eyes bright. But this time she wasn't laughing. She was focused. Her wand was up. "Hello, little thieves," she purred. "My lord expected you." Moody stepped forward, wand blazing. "Stay back." Bellatrix's smile widened. "Oh, I will. I don't need to come closer." She flicked her wand. A curse shot toward the clocks. The clocks shattered. Glass burst across the floor. The ticking became a roar. Time did something wrong. Hermione's stomach dropped as the room blurred. For 1 second, she saw Ron older, taller, face harder than it snapped back. Harry blinked and saw the room with dust in the air like it had been abandoned for years. Then it snapped back too. Ron screamed, "What is happening?" Rick's voice cut through, sharp and angry. "She destabilized the time field." Bellatrix laughed. "Good luck, science man." Rick lifted his wrist, tapping fast. His shield snapped on. A curse hit it and splashed away. But the air around the shield rippled weirdly, like time was chewing on it. Rick's eyes narrowed. "Okay, time messes with my field stability," noted. He pulled out 3 discs and flung them onto the floor. They lit up. A grid flashed. 2 Death Eaters tried to step forward and hit it, stiffening and dropping. Bellatrix hissed, annoyed. "Break it." She fired a blasting curse. The grid flickered. 1 disc cracked. Rick swore. "Hey, that took me 10 minutes to build." Moody fired stunners, fast and hard. Hermione and Ron backed Harry up, forming a tight cluster. Harry tried to cast, but his scar burned so hard his vision swam. Bellatrix's eyes locked on him. "Oh, Harry," she sang. "Do you feel him? Do you feel how close he is?" Harry's throat tightened. Then Rick stepped in front of Harry, blocking Bellatrix's line of sight. "Stop talking to the kid," Rick snapped. "It's creepy." Bellatrix's eyes narrowed. "And who will stop me?" Rick lifted his portal gun. A green ring opened behind Bellatrix. Bellatrix's eyes widened, but she twisted fast. Rick's portal didn't grab her. It grabbed the floor under her feet. Bellatrix dropped half a step, and the portal snapped shut again, cutting off her balance like the ground vanished for a blink. She stumbled. Moody's stunner hit her shoulder. Bellatrix hissed, pain flashing, but she stayed standing. Her eyes went wild. She screamed a curse, dark and heavy, and hurled it at Rick. Rick's shield flared. The curse pushed it hard. Rick's jaw clenched. He took one step back, boots scraping. Harry watched, shocked. Rick was holding. Not because he was stronger than magic, because he was stubborn and prepared. Rick's wrist beeped a warning. He snapped. Yeah, I know." Then he did something different. He opened a portal in front of his own shield. The dark curse vanished into green and reappeared above the Death Eaters, slamming into the floor between them. The blast threw them back like bowling pins. Bellatrix shrieked in rage. Hermione's mouth fell open. Ron whispered, He just threw it back." Rick glanced at them. "Yeah, it's called redirecting. You should try it sometime." The room shook again. Time warped harder. A clock hand flew through the air like a knife and stuck into the wall. Moody shouted, "This room is collapsing. Move!" Rick grabbed Hermione's sleeve. "Which door leads out?" Hermione looked around, panicked. Doors shifted around the room as if the walls were thinking. "One of them," she cried. "They change." Rick swore. He slapped a device onto the floor. It projected a fast map of the room and the doors, like a radar. Lines flickered. One door glowed brighter on the display. Rick pointed. "That one." Moody didn't question it. He shoved Harry and Ron toward it. Hermione ran with them. Rick stayed behind for half a second, eyes locked on Bellatrix. Bellatrix's grin returned. "Run, run." Rick flicked a small object at her feet. It popped into a thick, clear foam bubble around her legs. Bellatrix shrieked, trying to kick free. Rick smirked. Foam. Non-lethal. Humiliating. Then he jumped through the door after the others. The door slammed behind him. The ticking roar muffled. They stumbled into a room full of brains. Brains in tanks. Brains floating in green liquid. Brains connected to wires like ugly flowers. Ron gagged. "Nope, nope, nope." Hermione's skin crawled. Harry's scar pulsed, but weaker now, like the room was distracting the link. Rick stared, fascinated and grossed out. "Okay. Brain storage. Your government is sick." Moody snapped. "No time." A whispering filled the air. Not from people, from the brains. Hermione's thoughts felt louder, like someone turned up the volume inside her head. She heard fear. She heard curiosity. She heard a cold laugh that wasn't hers. Harry flinched. Rick slapped a device onto Harry's chest. Harry gasped. The scar pain dipped for a second. Harry stared at Rick. "What did you do?" Rick's voice was tight. "Signal jammer. It won't fix it. It'll just make it harder for him to tune in." Harry's eyes widened. Relief and anger mixed together. "You can do that?" Rick didn't look proud. He looked focused. "Yeah, and that means your enemy is using a frequency, which means he has rules." Hermione's heart thumped. That was Rick's real obsession. Rules. Moody grabbed Rick's arm again. "Portal us out." Rick pointed at the cracked portal gun. "In here? With time warps and brain whispers? Great idea. Let's roll the dice." Moody snarled. "Do it." Rick's eyes flicked to Harry, then to Hermione, then to Ron. For a second, Hermione saw it again. That tiny hesitation, like Rick was choosing between leave and protect. He swore under his breath. "Fine." He aimed. A green portal opened. It flickered. Rick's jaw tightened. "Hold together, you piece of junk." They rushed through. The world flipped, and they landed hard back in the empty Hogwarts classroom. The portal snapped shut behind them like a wound closing. For a moment, nobody moved. They just breathed. Moody staggered, then steadied himself. "We're alive." Ron shook, voice thin. "We shouldn't be." Hermione looked at Rick. Rick had his case on his chest. Inside it, the prophecy orb glowed faintly. Rick stared at it like it was a prize and a problem at the same time. Harry's scar still hurt, but it was quieter now, like the link had been forced to blink. Hermione whispered, "We stole a prophecy." Moody's face was grim. "And the Death Eaters knew we'd be there." Harry's stomach dropped. It was a trap. Rick nodded once. "Yeah." Hermione's voice shook. "Then why did he let us leave?" Rick's eyes narrowed, thinking fast. "Because," Rick said slowly, "he wanted me to see the department." Moody's magical eye whirred. "Why?" Rick's answer was quiet and sharp. "Because he wants me curious. He wants me hungry." Harry swallowed. "He wants you to come to him." Rick's mouth curled. "Yeah," he said. "He does." He turned and started pacing, fast. Hermione watched him, heart pounding. Rick was not scared. He was energized. That scared her more than anything. Rick stopped at his lab board and yanked a fresh parchment down. He wrote in big letters, "Department of Mysteries equals System Core. Voldemort said trap equals he's smart. Scarlink confirmed. Death magic connected to time plus mind." He stared at the words. Then he added one more, slower than the rest. "Not just magic, not just tech, both." Ron whispered, "What now?" Rick didn't look at him. "We build a detector," Rick said. "We find his anchors." Hermione's breath caught. "Horcruxes." Rick nodded. "Yeah, soul anchors." Harry stepped forward, voice tight. "Can you destroy them?" Rick looked at Harry. For a moment, his eyes were very old. "I can find them," Rick said. "Destroying them depends on what they're made of." Harry's throat tightened. "So we're still stuck." Rick's mouth twitched, almost like a smirk, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Welcome to my life, kid," he said. Outside Rick's lab, Hogwarts shifted quietly, like it had learned something new. In the Ministry, alarms were already being shouted about a break-in. And far away, in darkness, Voldemort smiled to himself. Because the strange man with the portal gun had taken the bait. And now the war had a new front. Not just spells, not just machines, but the place where both worlds touched. And if Rick kept chasing the rules of death, Voldemort planned to be waiting at the end of the lesson. Snow came early that year. It dusted the towers. It filled the courtyards. It made footprints easy to track, which meant nobody felt safe. Inside Hogwarts, Rick Sanchez built a routine like he built everything else. Fast, loud, messy. Hermione saw it every night after curfew. She would slip into the lab room with her cloak pulled tight, and Rick would already be there. Lights from his gadgets painted the stone walls green and blue. Parchment covered the tables like blankets. He had turned one corner into a testing wall. A row of targets hung there. Some were wooden, some were metal. One was a suit of armor that had volunteered in a way Hermione did not want to understand. He made labels for everything. Stun spell fast. Bind spell sticky. Dark curse hev. Hogwarts ward response moody. Hermione hated the moody label. Rick loved it. He also kept building a device that he called the Echo Finder. It was a metal ring the size of a dinner plate. Wires ran across it like a spider web. Crystals from Hogwarts glowed in little slots next to batteries Rick had made from who knows what. "It's not a Horcrux detector," Rick kept saying, even though it clearly was. "It's a frequency reader," he would snap. "Words matter." Hermione would roll her eyes and answer, "It finds Horcruxes." Rick would glare at her and say, "It finds soul anchors." Harry got dragged into the routine too. Not by force, by fear. After the Ministry break-in, Harry's scar burned more often. He would wake up sweating and shaking. The visions came in flashes. Sometimes it was Voldemort's face. Sometimes it was a cold hallway. Sometimes it was the feeling of someone else smiling inside his head. Rick's jammer helped. It was a small disc Harry wore under his shirt. It hummed when the scar link got loud. It didn't stop Voldemort, but it made the connection fuzzy, like someone put a blanket over a speaker. Harry hated needing it. He also hated that it worked. Ron stayed around because Ron refused to abandon his friends, even when he was terrified. He complained nonstop. Rick ignored him nonstop. The school noticed the changes. Some students started copying Hermione and writing labels on their books. A Ravenclaw asked Rick if he could audit his lab notes. Rick laughed so hard he nearly fell off a chair, then told the Ravenclaw to go away unless he could build a battery from a spoon. The teachers noticed too. McGonagall hated Rick's hallway hum. She hated the drones. She hated how Rick talked to her like she was a strict aunt, not a powerful witch. Snape hated Rick for different reasons. Snape hated him because Rick didn't fear him. He watched Rick like he watched poison, waiting for a mistake. Moody didn't hate Rick. Moody treated Rick like a loaded weapon pointed in a random direction. He didn't like him, but he respected the danger. And above all of them, Dumbledore watched. He didn't watch with a leash. He watched with patience, like he was waiting to see what Rick would do when nobody forced him. Because that was the real test. One night, the Echo Finder finally did something. Hermione was tightening a wire when the ring gave a soft chirp. A thin line of light appeared across its center. Rick's head snapped up so fast it looked like it might pop off. "What?" he said, eyes wide. The ring chirped again. The light line turned. It pointed. Not at Hermione, not at Harry. At the stone wall. At Hogwarts. Hermione's breath caught. It's detecting something here. Ron's voice went small. In the school? Rick stepped closer to the ring, scanning the readout. Numbers flashed. Patterns shifted. "Yeah," Rick muttered. "Yeah, that's a signal. That's a real signal." Harry's scar prickled. He swallowed. "What does it mean?" Rick's jaw tightened. He looked at them like he hated having to say it. "It means your death guy hid one of his anchors in your castle," Rick said. Hermione's stomach dropped. Ron whispered, "No, no way." Harry's face went pale. "He can't." "Dumbledore." Rick cut him off. "Your can't is cute. Your enemy doesn't care." Hermione forced her voice steady. "Where is it?" Rick watched the light line rotate again. It adjusted like it was tuning in. Then it pointed down, toward the floor, toward the corridor beneath them. Rick's mouth curled, not happy, but satisfied. "Okay," he said. "We go hunting." Hermione's mind raced. "We tell Dumbledore." Rick waved a hand. "Sure, we tell the Beard Man. Great. And then we also move fast before your ministry finds a way to lock this room." Harry stepped forward. "We should tell him anyway." Rick stared at Harry for a moment. Then he grunted. "Fine, one adult, not the pink one." Hermione almost laughed, but she couldn't. Her chest felt too tight. Because if a Horcrux was inside Hogwarts, then Voldemort was closer than they thought. And Hogwarts had been sleeping with a knife under its pillow. Dumbledore came to the lab near midnight. He stepped inside and paused at the sight of the Echo Finder, humming and glowing. His eyes flicked to the labels on the wall, then to Harry's pale face, then to Rick. "You have made progress," Dumbledore said quietly. Rick shrugged like it was nothing. "Yeah, magic has patterns. Surprise." Hermione spoke fast before Rick could steer the room into insults. "It detected something in the castle. A Horcrux, we think." Dumbledore's expression changed. Not shock, not disbelief. Recognition. He closed his eyes for a second like he was absorbing weight. "Show me," he said. Rick tapped the device. The light line formed again. It pointed down. Dumbledore's gaze hardened. "Where?" Rick grabbed a parchment map Hermione had helped draw. It showed corridors and stairwells and a rough mark of where they stood. He drew a circle where the signal was strongest. "Below us," Rick said. "Old corridors, old storage, hidden junk." Dumbledore's voice was calm, but it carried steel. "The room of requirement." Hermione's heart jumped. "You think it's there?" Dumbledore nodded once. "It would be a clever hiding place." Rick's eyes narrowed. "Clever, sure, but not perfect." Harry swallowed. Can we destroy it? Dumbledore looked at Harry, then at Rick, then back at Harry. We can try, he said. Rick crossed his arms. Destroying it is not my specialty. I can locate it. I can contain it. But your soul magic is gross and sticky. Dumbledore didn't argue. Then we will use what we have. Rick gave a short laugh. Yeah. Teamwork. Amazing. But his eyes stayed on the device. His fingers tapped his wrist once, like he was already thinking ahead. Dumbledore turned to Hermione. Miss Granger, Mr. Weasley, you will not come. Ron blurted. What? Hermione's cheeks went hot. Professor, No, Dumbledore said, still calm. Not this time. Harry stepped forward, voice tight. I should. It's connected to him. Dumbledore's gaze softened. It is, and that is why you should not. Rick scoffed. He's right for the wrong reasons, but he's right. Harry glared. Don't act like you care. Rick's face went flat. I care about not dying in a hallway because a teenager wanted to be brave. Harry flinched, anger mixing with shame. Dumbledore's voice stayed gentle. Harry, you are brave, but bravery is not the same as strategy. Harry's scar prickled, like it was listening. Rick lifted the Echo Finder ring by its frame. Fine. Beardman and me. We go. Hermione's stomach twisted. She hated being told no. She hated being left behind. But she also saw the truth. If something went wrong, she couldn't stop Voldemort. Rick might. Dumbledore nodded. Yes. You and I. Rick muttered. Great. Field trip with Gandalf. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled for half a second. I do not know who that is. You're lucky, Rick said. They left without a parade. No students in the halls, no shouting, no drama. Just two old men moving through a sleeping castle. One with a wand, one with a portal gun and a metal ring that hummed. Hermione watched them go from the doorway, heart pounding. She felt like she was watching a door close on a future she couldn't control. The room of requirement opened like it always did. Not with a lock, with a choice. Dumbledore walked 3 times past a blank wall, thinking of the thing they needed. A place where hidden things are kept. The door appeared. Rick stared at it like he was staring at an animal that had learned to mimic a door. Your architecture is insane, he muttered. Dumbledore pushed the door open. The room beyond was huge. It was packed with stacks of broken furniture, old books, cracked mirrors, dusty cabinets, and junk that looked older than the school itself. Rick's Echo Finder chirped hard. The light line pointed straight through the piles. Dumbledore's wand glowed softly, lighting a path. Rick moved fast, stepping over a broken chair, ducking under a hanging chandelier frame. He looked less like a drunk mess now and more like what he truly was. A predator of problems. The Echo Finder line snapped right, then left, then straight again. Rick followed it, breath steady. Then the ring gave a long, loud beep. Rick stopped. Dumbledore stopped too. The air felt colder. Not winter cold. Wrong cold. Rick's eyes narrowed. Yeah, that's it. Dumbledore's wand hand tightened. Half buried under an old statue head and a pile of broken tiaras was a silver diadem. It was dusty, but the metal still caught light. It looked harmless. It wasn't. Harry's scar wasn't here, but Dumbledore still felt it. The sourness. The wrongness. Rick lifted a tool like a metal set of tongs with a faint field around it. No touching, he said, mostly to himself. He grabbed the diadem with the field. The diadem twitched. Not physically. Something in the air twitched. A whisper curled through the room. Too soft to be a voice, but too sharp to be nothing. Dumbledore's eyes hardened. It is awake. Rick's jaw clenched. Yeah, it's broadcasting. The diadem's surface darkened like a shadow crawled across it. A face didn't form, not fully, but a presence pushed back, like the object was angry it had been found. Rick's field flickered. His wrist device beeped a warning. He swore, "Of course it fights." Dumbledore raised his wand. "We must destroy it quickly." Rick snapped. "With what? You got a delete soul piece spell?" Dumbledore's voice stayed calm. Such magic resists simple spells. Rick's eyes flashed. Then we don't do simple. He pulled a small box from his coat and opened it. Inside were 3 glass needles filled with thick green liquid. Dumbledore's gaze sharpened. What is that? Rick grimaced. A corrosive agent. It eats through most materials. It might not kill the soul piece, but it might break the container. The diadem pulsed darker. Rick held it steady in the field. Come on. Dumbledore pointed his wand at the diadem, whispering a containment charm to hold it still, to dull its reach. Rick injected the liquid into the metal with one of the needles. The diadem hissed. The air turned colder. A pressure hit the room like a heavy hand on the chest. Dumbledore's feet slid half an inch on the floor. Rick's field sputtered. The diadem flared with a sudden angry wave. The room's piles shook. A shelf toppled somewhere far back, crashing loudly. Dumbledore's jaw tightened. It is calling out. Rick's eyes narrowed. Calling out to who? The answer came fast. The castle lights flickered. Not candles. Not torches. The very glow in the walls dimmed for a heartbeat. Then, deep in the distance, a scream of magic rolled across Hogwarts like thunder. Dumbledore's face went grim. He felt it, Dumbledore said. Rick's mouth twisted. Yeah, your death guy just got a notification. The diadem's metal began to warp under the corrosive liquid. It cracked along the edge. Rick's eyes lit up. Yes. Break, you stupid crown. The crack widened. A thin wail rose, not from a mouth, but from the air itself. Dumbledore's wand flared brighter as he reinforced the containment. Then the diadem split. The dark presence inside it surged like it was trying to leap out. Rick's field snapped tighter. Dumbledore shouted a charm, locking the presence down for one final moment. Rick slammed the broken pieces into a thick metal case and snapped it shut. The case hissed and sealed. The pressure vanished. The room went quiet. Rick breathed once, hard. Dumbledore lowered his wand. For a moment, they stood in silence, surrounded by junk and dust. Then Rick said flat and surprised, "Okay." Dumbledore looked at him. "Okay?" Rick stared at the sealed case. "We just killed a part of him." Dumbledore's voice was quiet. "Yes." Rick's expression didn't turn proud. It turned thoughtful, like he had just proven a rule was real. And that meant there were more rules to hunt. But Hogwarts did not give them time to celebrate. A blast shook the castle. Not inside this room. Far away. A wave of heat rolled through the air as if something heavy had hit the outer wards. Dumbledore's eyes flashed. "An attack," he said. Rick's face hardened. "Of course." They ran. Harry woke up mid-scream. His scar burned like someone had pressed a hot coin into his skin. He sat up, breathing hard, heart hammering. The dorm room shook slightly. Dust drifted from the canopy. Ron woke too, eyes wide. What was that? Harry clutched his scar. He could feel it. Voldemort was close. Not close in distance. Close in intent. Harry threw on his cloak and ran. Ron stumbled after him, swearing. Hermione met them in the corridor, already dressed, already pale. "I felt it," she said, voice shaking. "The wards, something hit the wards." They sprinted toward the stairwell. Spells cracked in the distance like fireworks. Students poured into halls, shouting, panicked, half asleep. McGonagall's voice echoed through the castle, sharp and strong. "Back to your common rooms. Now." But the castle wasn't just under attack. It was under pressure. The walls vibrated. A low hum filled the air, like Hogwarts was straining to hold something out. Harry's scar pulsed again. And with it came a flash. Voldemort's eyes. Red. Calm. Focused. "You broke what was mine," the cold thought seemed to say. Harry's knees nearly buckled. Hermione grabbed his arm. "Harry!" Ron grabbed his other arm. "Keep moving." They reached a corridor that overlooked the main entrance hall. Below, Order members were already in position. Moody was there, shouting orders. Teachers formed lines. Protective spells arched overhead like domes. Then the front doors blew inward. Not from a bomb. From force. A wave of dark energy slammed into the hall. Shards of wood flew. Cold air poured in, and Death Eaters surged through the smoke like a flood. Harry's stomach dropped. Bellatrix was among them, laughing again. But she wasn't the center. The center was the space behind them. A slow, heavy quiet. A presence. Voldemort stepped forward, wand in hand, like he had all the time in the world. Harry's scar screamed. Harry couldn't breathe. Hermione whispered, "He's here." Ron's face went gray. "He's actually here." Voldemort lifted his wand, not rushing, not frantic. His eyes swept the hall. They did not land on Harry first. They landed on the walls, on the ceiling, on the wards. Then they narrowed with interest, because Voldemort could feel something else now. A second kind of power. A harsh, bright signal. "Rick." Voldemort's voice carried smooth and cold. "Mr. Sanchez." Harry's blood ran colder. Voldemort smiled. "Come out." Moody roared. "Shields." A storm of spells erupted. Order shields flared. Death Eater curses slammed into them like rain. McGonagall fought like a blade, snapping spells that turned stone into barriers and barriers into traps. Snape moved like a dark shadow, striking fast at Death Eaters who tried to flank. The hall became chaos. And then Rick arrived. Not through a hallway, through a portal. A green ring opened above the center of the hall, and Rick dropped out, landing on his feet like gravity was an insult. He looked around, taking it all in 1 second. The Death Eaters, the shields, the broken doors, Voldemort. Rick's face twisted. "Wow." Voldemort's eyes locked onto him. For a heartbeat, the hall felt silent in the middle of the noise, like the world paused to watch two systems meet. Voldemort spoke, calm. "You broke my work." Rick shrugged. "Yeah, it was gross." Voldemort's smile thinned. "You are clever." Rick's smile was sharp and mean. "Yeah, and you're a control freak with a death hobby." Voldemort lifted his wand slightly, almost polite. "I offer you freedom." Rick laughed once. "Freedom from what?" "You?" Voldemort's red eyes didn't blink. "From limits." Rick's laughter died. Voldemort's voice stayed smooth. "You chase rules. You chase answers. I have done the work you crave. I stepped past death. I can show you how." Harry heard it and felt sick. It wasn't just an offer. It was a hook. And Voldemort was good at hooks. Rick's eyes narrowed. "And what do you want?" Voldemort's smile returned, small. "Your door." Rick's hand tightened on the portal gun. Voldemort's voice softened, almost kind. "With your door, distance ends, hiding ends, running ends. We could remake every cage." Rick stared at him. For a second, Harry thought Rick might be tempted. Not by evil, by the challenge, by the idea of cracking the biggest rule. Rick's jaw clenched. Then Rick looked to the side, not at Voldemort. At the students huddled behind shields, faces pale. At Harry, standing on the balcony with his scar blazing. Rick's eyes hardened. "You know what's funny?" Rick said, loud enough to cut through the fight for a moment. "Every universe has a guy like you." Voldemort's gaze sharpened. Rick pointed at Voldemort. "You think fear makes you special. You think control makes you safe. You think you're the only one who figured out that dying sucks." Voldemort's smile didn't move. "I think you want to win." Rick's voice turned flat. "No." He lifted the portal gun. Voldemort's eyes narrowed. Ready. Rick aimed it not at Voldemort. At the broken doors. A portal opened. It wasn't a trick portal. It was a rescue portal. It opened to the snowy courtyard outside. Far enough that anyone shoved through would land on open ground. Not on spikes. Not in fire. Rick shouted to the defenders, "Push them out!" Moody blinked, then grinned like a wolf. "You heard him." The order surged. McGonagall's spells snapped like whips, forcing Death Eaters back. Snape struck low and fast, disarming one, tripping another. A group of Death Eaters tried to regroup, and Rick flicked his wrist. 3 discs shot out and stuck to the floor in a triangle. A glowing grid flared up waist-high this time. Not on the ground. Death Eaters hit it and slammed backward like they ran into a wall. Bellatrix shrieked, furious. "Break it!" She hurled a blasting curse. The grid flickered but held. Rick grinned. "Yeah, try harder." Voldemort lifted his wand. He didn't waste spells on the grid. He aimed at Rick. A curse flew. Not loud, not flashy. It was clean, precise, deadly. Rick's wrist beeped. His shield snapped on. The curse hit the shield and made it sing with pressure. Rick's boot slid across the floor. His face tightened. "Okay, that's the heavy stuff again." Voldemort stepped forward, eyes cold. "You will give me your door." Rick's voice was strained. "No." Voldemort's wand moved again. Another curse. Rick's shield flared brighter. Rick's device screamed warnings now. Rick gritted his teeth. Harry watched, breath caught. Rick was human. His shield was tech. Voldemort was pushing it like a tidal wave. Then Dumbledore arrived. He strode into the hall from the side corridor like a storm made calm. His wand was raised, his face set. He did not shout. He simply pointed his wand at the space between Rick and Voldemort. A silver-blue barrier formed, not like Rick's glassy shield, but like a living wall of light. Voldemort's curse hit it and shattered into sparks. The hall shook. Voldemort's eyes narrowed with real anger now. "Dumbledore," he said softly. Dumbledore's voice was gentle. "Tom." Harry's scar pulsed with the name. Rick glanced at Dumbledore's barrier, impressed despite himself. "Okay, that's a good one." Dumbledore didn't look away from Voldemort. "Mr. Sanchez, take the children back." Rick scoffed. "I'm busy." Dumbledore's voice stayed calm. "Do it." Rick hesitated. Harry saw it. That tiny pause again. Then Rick snapped. "Fine." He pointed his portal gun up toward the balcony. A portal opened right beside Harry. Hermione grabbed Harry's arm, eyes wide. "Harry, move!" Ron shoved him. Harry stumbled through and landed in the Gryffindor common room with a hard thud on the carpet. Students screamed. Portraits shouted. The fire popped. More portals opened as Rick and Order members shoved kids through from different parts of the castle. Safe zones, safe rooms, anywhere away from the main fight. Harry scrambled up, breathing hard, scar burning, heart screaming to go back. "I can't just," he gasped. Hermione grabbed his face with both hands, forcing him to look at her. "You can. For now. If you rush in, you die." Harry's eyes stung with rage and fear. Ron's voice shook. "We have to trust them." Harry hated that word. Trust. He hated needing it. But he could still feel Voldemort's cold mind pressing against the castle. And he knew this attack wasn't just about killing. It was about Rick. It was about the door between worlds. Back in the entrance hall, the fight turned into a chess match made of fire and stone. Voldemort tried to push forward. Dumbledore held him back. The Order fought Death Eaters in messy bursts, protecting the teachers who anchored the defenses. Rick moved like a ghost with a toolbox. He didn't duel like a wizard. He cut space. He redirected. He trapped. When a Death Eater aimed at McGonagall's back, Rick opened a portal under the caster's feet and dropped him into the courtyard snow with a yelp. When Bellatrix tried to rush Dumbledore, Rick threw a foam device that exploded around her wand arm, locking it in place for 3 seconds. 3 seconds was enough for Snape to stun her. She hit the floor snarling. Rick glanced at Snape like he was surprised. "Okay, Goth Professor can fight." Snape didn't answer. He looked at Rick like he wanted to hate him, but couldn't find the time. Voldemort's eyes tracked Rick between exchanges with Dumbledore. "You hide behind toys," Voldemort said. Rick barked a laugh. "You hide behind soul fragments, you freak." Voldemort's smile vanished. For the first time, his calm cracked. Dumbledore's eyes sharpened, and his spells hit harder. Voldemort realized something then. Not everything, but enough. Rick knew about Horcruxes now. Rick was a threat. So Voldemort changed tactics. He didn't try to kill Rick first. He tried to isolate him. A curse slammed into the floor near Rick's feet. The stone split. Dark smoke spilled out like a living thing and wrapped around Rick's legs, dragging. Rick swore and tried to cut a portal open, and the smoke clung to the portal edge, distorting it. Rick's eyes went wide. Oh, come on. The portal wobbled, unstable. Rick's device beeped like it was panicking. Moody shouted, "Sanchez!" Rick's boots slid as the smoke pulled him toward the broken doors, toward the courtyard, toward open space where Death Eaters waited. Rick gritted his teeth, reached into his coat, and slammed a small spike device into the stone. It anchored. A bright field snapped around his legs and severed the smoke like scissors cutting ribbon. Rick stumbled free, breathing hard. "Okay," he growled. "So you have anti-portal interference. Good for you." Voldemort's eyes gleamed. "Learn." Rick stared at him. Then Rick did something nobody expected. He tossed his portal gun. Not away. Up. Straight into the air, spinning. Everyone's eyes flicked to it for a split second. Voldemort's gaze sharpened. Because for Rick, the portal gun was the prize. Rick lifted his empty hands like he was surrendering. Voldemort's smile returned, thin and hungry. Then Rick snapped his fingers. A drone shot up and caught the portal gun mid-spin, then zipped sideways fast. A decoy device in Rick's other sleeve blinked green and mimicked the portal gun's signal. Voldemort's eyes narrowed. Rick grinned, breathless. "You want the door? Try and take the right one." Voldemort's calm finally broke into real anger. A wave of force slammed outward. Windows shattered. Candles blew out. The hall shook so hard a chandelier crashed down behind the order line, smashing into sparks and glass. People screamed. Dumbledore's barrier held, but it strained. Rick's face went hard. He could leave right now. He could cut a portal and vanish into some other universe. Nobody here could chase him. That thought flickered through him like a reflex. Then Rick saw a first year near the stairs, frozen in terror, not moved through the portals in time. A Death Eater raised a wand at the child. Rick's jaw clenched. He moved. He didn't think. He opened a portal between the wand and the child. The curse vanished. It reappeared 5 feet away and slammed into a suit of armor instead, blasting it to pieces. The child fell backward, sobbing. Rick grabbed the kid by the back of the robe and shoved them toward a teacher. "Move! Run!" The teacher stared at Rick like she couldn't understand what she was seeing. Rick didn't look back. He was already running toward the main clash. Moody shouted, "That's it! Push them!" The defenders surged again. Dumbledore's spells drove Voldemort back step by step, not defeating him, not overpowering him completely, but forcing him to give ground. Rick's traps and portals turned the hall into a maze for Death Eaters. And then the sealed case on Rick's chest began to hum. The broken diadem pieces inside it. The Horcrux echo. It pulsed. Not stronger. Weaker. Like a candle going out. Voldemort felt it. His head turned slightly. His eyes sharpened with sudden clarity. "You did it," Voldemort whispered. Rick panted, sweat on his forehead. "Yeah, we did." Voldemort's voice turned venomous. "You will do it again. For me." Rick spat to the side. "Nope." Voldemort lifted his wand again. Dumbledore lifted his. Their spells collided in a burst of light that made the room flash white. The pressure in the air became crushing, and in that moment, Voldemort made a choice. Not to win, to escape with advantage. He snapped his wand toward the ceiling. A dark crack opened above the doors, tearing at the ward barrier from the inside like a claw. The crack widened just enough. Death Eaters threw smoke bombs and darkness spells, blinding the defenders for a heartbeat. Voldemort's voice cut through the chaos, calm again. "This is not over," he said. "It has only become interesting." Then he vanished into the dark crack. Bellatrix, half-stunned and snarling, was yanked away by a Death Eater. More masked figures fled. The crack sealed behind them with a shudder. The hall went quiet in slow waves. Not silence, just the end of immediate violence. Moody stood breathing hard, wand still raised. McGonagall's shoulders rose and fell, her eyes scanning for any last threat. Dumbledore lowered his wand slowly. Rick stood in the middle of the wrecked hall, chest heaving, eyes bright with anger and something else. Not victory. Resolve. Dumbledore looked at him. You could have left. Rick stared back, jaw tight. Yeah, Rick said. I know. Dumbledore's voice stayed gentle. And you did not. Rick's eyes flicked away, like he didn't want anyone to see what was in them. I hate guys like him, Rick said, voice low. They use kids like shields. It's pathetic. Moody snorted. Welcome to our world. Rick's mouth twisted. Your world sucks. McGonagall snapped, tired and furious. And yet you are here. Rick glanced at her. Yeah, lucky me. Dumbledore stepped closer, gaze steady. Mr. Sanchez, Voldemort will return, and the Ministry will not stop trying to control you. Rick's face hardened. Let them try. Dumbledore's voice softened. Will you help us? Rick's first instinct was to say no, to be rude, to pretend he didn't care. But then his eyes landed on the broken doors, the shattered glass, the scorch marks on stone that had held school children laughing just days ago. He exhaled. Sharp. I'll help, Rick said. On my terms. McGonagall narrowed her eyes. And what are your terms? Rick pointed to his lab corridor in his mind like it was a fortress. No mind games, he said. No cages. No Ministry hands on my tech. And if I find another soul anchor, we destroy it fast. Dumbledore nodded. Agreed. Rick blinked like he didn't expect agreement. Then he grunted. Good. Moody jerked his chin at the sealed case. That thing. Is it done? Rick looked down at it. The hum had stopped. It's dead, Rick said. Or as dead as a soul fragment can be. Dumbledore's eyes closed for a brief moment. Not relief, but steady focus. One less, Dumbledore whispered. Rick heard it. And for the first time since he crashed into Hogwarts, Rick didn't feel like he was just passing through someone else's story. He felt like he had stepped into the war for real. Not because he wanted to, because he chose to. And that choice changed the board. The days after the attack felt both slower and heavier. The castle repaired itself in small ways. Teachers fixed walls. Students swept glass. Portraits complained loudly. The wards changed. Not just because Dumbledore strengthened them. Because Rick added layers. He didn't replace magic. He built around it. He placed small sensors in corners that listened to spell pressure. He hung drones that watched for sudden dark surges. He created safe room portals that could open only from inside common rooms, not from outside. He labeled them all. Safe exit, do not open for fun. Ward listener. Anti-apparition interference map, wizards love cheating. McGonagall pretended not to read the labels. She read them. The Ministry arrived, furious, and found itself blocked by Dumbledore's calm refusal and Hogwarts' new security rules. Umbridge tried to push an inspection through. Her decree papers got misplaced. 3 times. She screamed at Filch until Filch nearly cried. Rick watched her from a corridor once and muttered, "She's like a cursed teapot." Hermione asked, "What does that mean?" Rick said, "Annoying, loud, and always boiling with nothing useful." Harry stopped having full night vision storms, not because Voldemort stopped, because the jammer got better. Rick made it smaller, smoother, harder to detect. He even stopped calling it a jammer and started calling it a noise filter, like he was trying to be less cruel. He still failed most of the time, but he tried. And Harry noticed, not with gratitude, with confusion, because Rick was not supposed to be someone who helped. Rick was supposed to be a disaster. Hermione was the first to say it out loud, late at night in the lab, while Rick tightened a screw and stared at a map. "You stayed," she said. Rick didn't look up. "Yeah. You chose to," Hermione said. Rick's jaw tightened. "Don't make it a thing." Hermione crossed her arms. "It is a thing." Rick sighed, long and tired. He finally looked at her. "I stayed because I hate bullies," he said. "Happy?" Hermione's eyes softened. "That's not the only reason." Rick's gaze sharpened. "Careful, kid." Hermione swallowed, but she didn't back down. "You keep pretending you don't care so it won't hurt. But you care anyway. Rick stared at her for a long moment. Then he looked away, like he couldn't stand being seen. Go to bed, he muttered. Hermione smiled a little, sad and proud at the same time. She left. Rick sat alone, staring at the ward map. He had drawn the castle like a machine, but now he knew it wasn't just a machine. It was a home, and homes had rules that weren't written on paper. Weeks later, on a quiet night, snow fell softly outside the tower windows. The great hall was calm again. The ceiling showed stars, candles floated steady, but it did not feel like before. People spoke quieter. They looked over their shoulders more. Stories spread. Some students whispered that a strange man lived in a hidden classroom and built anti-curse machines. Some said he was a hero. Some said he was a monster. Some said he was both. Rick didn't correct them. He didn't give speeches. He didn't shake hands. He just kept working. In the lab, the echo finder sat on the table, silent for now. Next to it was the sealed case where the diadem had died. Rick stared at it like it was a trophy he didn't want. A soft knock sounded. Rick didn't flinch this time. "Come in," he said. Hermione stepped inside. She wasn't in her cloak now. She wore her normal school robes, hair slightly messy, eyes tired. She looked around at the room. It had changed again. Not cleaner, but more settled. Like the chaos had a purpose. Hermione's gaze landed on a small corner by the wall. Rick had set up a tiny table with a single old Hogwarts book open on it. A book about protective charms. Hermione blinked. "Are you reading?" Rick scoffed. "Don't get excited. It's boring." Hermione walked closer. "You're still reading it." Rick didn't answer. Hermione sat on the edge of a chair, quiet. After a moment, she asked softly, "Do you still want to leave?" Rick's fingers tapped the table once, twice. "Yeah," he said. "Of course." Hermione nodded. "But you haven't." Rick's mouth twisted. "My portal gun's still cracked. My calibration's messy because your universe has a different baseline." Hermione watched him. "Is that the only reason?" Rick's eyes narrowed. "You want an emotional answer." Hermione said, very simply, "I want the truth." Rick stared at the sealed case again. Then he spoke, voice low. "The truth is, your school is annoying," he said. "Your rules are weird. Your government is stupid. Your paintings won't shut up." Hermione's lips twitched. Rick continued, softer, like the words were forced out. "But it's not fake," he said. "It's not just noise." Hermione's throat tightened. "You mean it matters?" Rick's jaw clenched, eyes flicking away. "Yeah, whatever." Hermione smiled, small and tired. "That's the nicest thing you've ever said." Rick grunted. "Don't tell anyone. I have a reputation." Hermione glanced at the labels on the wall, then at the echo finder. "What happens next?" she asked. Rick leaned back in his chair and stared at the ward map like it was a battlefield. "We find the rest," he said. "One by one." Hermione swallowed. "And Voldemort?" Rick's smile was thin. "He's going to keep coming. He's going to try to learn my tech. He's going to try to turn my curiosity into a leash." Hermione's eyes widened slightly. "Can he?" Rick's gaze sharpened. "Not easily." Hermione nodded, trusting him more than she wanted to admit. Outside, far away, in the dark places of the world, Voldemort sat quiet and thinking. He had felt the diadem die. He had tasted the shape of Rick's tools. And he had learned something important. Rick Sanchez did not obey fear. That meant Voldemort needed a different hook. A different door. And Voldemort was very good at building doors. Back in Hogwarts, Dumbledore walked the halls alone once that night. He paused outside Rick's lab door. He did not knock. He simply listened to the faint hum, steady and controlled. Then he looked up toward the towers, where the stars turned slow above the enchanted ceiling. "A new piece on the board," Dumbledore murmured. He turned and walked away. In the lab, Rick stared at the ward map and then at his portal gun. He held it in his hand like it was heavier than it should be. A doorway to anywhere. A way out. A way to run. He could leave. He could stop caring. He could make the whole problem someone else's. Rick's fingers tightened around the grip. Then he set it down. Not because he was trapped, because he chose to. He looked at the echo finder, silent but ready. Then he looked at the words on the wall. One of his oldest labels, still there from the first week. Magic has rules. Rick snorted softly. Yeah, he whispered. And so do I. The candles in the lab flickered once, like the castle heard him. Then they steadied. And Hogwarts went on breathing in the dark, changed forever, but still standing.